Okay. Praise and glory and honor. The Lord God Almighty, the only true God, the only one that has immortality. The beginning and the ending, the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. The first one to be God and the last one. He's called the Ancient of Days, called the Father of Jesus, Father of Moses, Father of all who believe. He's the one that divided the Red Sea, raised Lazarus from the dead, raised Jesus from the dead, heals the sick, opens the eyes of the blind, and stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. I like that language. And so that's the God I believe in, and I'm going to stick with it. I'm sticking to it. That's the story, and I'm sticking to it. So here we are at number 9. Number 9 in the series of the revelation on the book of Revelation. A new revelation on the book of Revelation. Enlightenment on the book of Revelation. Is it a revelation or is it a perversion? Is it a fantasy or is it a revelation? Was it concocted, created, and fabricated? Or was it true? No. Some parts of it seem to be true. Other parts are clearly not true. And all the events that were supposedly supposed to happen, that were prophesied of, haven't happened. All of them. And they were supposed to happen soon. And they haven't happened even long. It's been eons since this book came out. Eons. Ages. All right, so starting at, we're in Revelation 12 now. I think I have 17 verses. I think that's the whole chapter. I think I'm going to look at all of them, I think. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven. I mean, heaven means the sky, so other versions say in the sky. A woman clothed with the sun. No, women are not clothed. Clothed with the sun. No such thing. And the moon under her feet. Oh yeah, she was a big one. A big girl. And on her head a crown of 12 stars. So that's just trying to make you think, well, gee, that must be the 12 tribes of Israel. Why would... See, this story is supposed to be about Mary, really. This is a very strange account that is very perverted and very not in line with the Gospels, yet it's clearly talking about Jesus and Mary. Yet it's not the same story that we know from the Gospels. Hello. What is going on here? Where did this book come from? So it goes on to say, and it says, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. Gee, I wonder who that is. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, in the sky. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his heads. Well, that's a horror. That's a monster of amazing proportions. In verse 4, and his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven. All right, well, why, if this is supposed to be, people believe that this is talking about angels, right? Well, why don't they say angels? Because the stars are suns. When I first read this, I said, wow, this big dragon was whacking suns, was hitting suns with his tail. He's a big one, another big one. And he was sucking up all these suns. That's just a drew. He was pulling in all these suns with his tail. These giant suns, like we have a sun, right? S-U-N. So what's with the code? You know, the word code. They don't use, this book never uses the right, never tells you the plain and simple truth with plain and simple words. I prayed yesterday that God would tell me about the future and tell me things I need to know with plain and simple words. I don't need to be slammed up against the wall to get a message from God. I'm not going to believe that. So then it goes on in that verse, and move it up. And did cast them to the earth. You know, so we have to believe that these were angels, because later on it tells you that it was a bunch of fallen angels, a bunch of angels, supposedly. We don't have any other information to corroborate this account on these angels, which are not even spoken of as angels or beings or anything. They're calling them stars. What does that mean? And supposedly they were cast to the earth, and the dragon stood, then it changes the subject, and says, and the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Once again, we're still talking about Mary here. Well, obviously, he didn't do that. So supposedly Satan was standing right in front of the woman, Mary, right? And he was ready to eat Jesus. Well, devour, that's what that means. Consume, whatever. Obviously, he didn't do that. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations. Well, that was supposed to be Jesus. This is supposedly talking about Jesus, right? With a rod of iron, which would be the word of God, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne. So, you know, I believe this book. I mean, I believe many parts of this book. Caught up to God, not unto God. You know, up until I started this series, until I really started to look closely at this book and, you know, rechecking it and looking at it again. And I thought this would have been good for the incarnation. You know, God would catch the child up to where he is, and Jesus, the pre-existent Jesus. I'm going to show you a verse that sort of indicates that Michael was Jesus in the pre-existence in a minute or two. I thought that was a good idea, you know, bring him up to heaven. Then he can incarnate into the body, into the baby body, right? To the baby's body. And then he can zip him back down to the planet, right? Or to the other dimension. But now I'm saying, in the light of all the false things, all the phony baloney in this book, that I don't know if I believe that. I just don't, this just doesn't, I just would think this doesn't mean anything. It's just hogwash, It's just another false statement in the book. Another false statement in this account. Verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness. Well, I'm going to read the accounts that we have of what happened after Jesus was born, and supposedly, there's two opposing accounts in the Gospels. There's two opposing accounts of what happened to Jesus when he was born, after he was born. And one of them claims that Jesus was taken with her, with Joseph. All three of them went into Egypt, not the wilderness. Here, it's claiming that just the woman. Where did this come from? Where did this book come from? But it's claiming that she ran away into the woods, where she has a place prepared of God. Really in the mood of modernizing this language. Where she has a place prepared of God that they should feed her. Oh, they're going to feed her? That's good, free food. Feed her there 1,260 days, otherwise known as 1,260 days. And then I had to translate it. No version puts it in the simple language that we need it. And that is 3.45 years. That's what this is claiming. That this mother of what appears to be Jesus, it has to be. There's no other picture of this. There's no other picture that is being described here. So 3.75 years, the woman was supposed to be gone. Well, she wasn't with her son, Jesus? She left Joseph? Not true. The thing is so phony, I don't get it. Maybe these people that wrote this, they didn't even read that. Maybe they didn't even have the Gospels at this point. And this is all they knew. Who knows? It's just unknown. The whole book is an unknown and a mystery, to say the least. So here's the account from Matthew. Which claims that Herod was going to kill all the firstborn under 2 years of age. And when they were departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appears to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother. See? So it's saying that all three of them are supposed to go and flee into Egypt, not the wilderness, and be there until I bring you word, if you believe this account. I believe the other one. I don't believe that this ever happened. I don't believe that an angel appeared, that they went to Egypt for however time. It doesn't say, I don't think. But let me go on. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Yeah, thanks to the wise men that came by and tipped him off, which was supposedly was being led by God. And if that hadn't happened, he would never have known anything about Jesus being born. And when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night. Oh, they didn't go in the day, they had to go at night. No, they didn't start at night. and departed. They didn't go. I don't even think they even, this story I think is totally false. And departed into Egypt. Wow, really? Left Israel without doing anything? What about the offerings that had to be done? Well, that's what is told in Luke, which I believe is what happened. And was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Well, that was talking about Israel being taken out of Egypt. God delivered the nation, or the giant family, it was a mega family, big family of people. And he took them out of Egypt. He called his son Israel out of Egypt. Has nothing to do with Jesus. Nothing. I mean, it's saying he called him out of Egypt, Jesus. It's claiming that, well, he was called to Egypt, and then he was called out of Egypt. None of that is true. I don't believe any of that. So here's the Luke account, and this is clearly a totally different story. It is totally not the same. And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child. See, so just 8 days went by since he was born. There's no angel that appeared to Joseph in a dream, nothing like that. 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child. His name was called Jesus, which was so named to the angel before he was conceived in the womb. Right. And when the days of her purification according to the law of Moses were accomplished, we know that happened. We know it. They brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. That's the way it happened, I believe. And verse 23. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice according to that which is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. This is the reality, I believe, of what happened. And then, moving up to the verse 39, the same chapter, and when they had performed, move that up. And when they had performed all things according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee. They didn't go to Egypt. To their own city, Nazareth, not Egypt. And it goes on to say, and the child grew. Right, he didn't leave to go to Egypt, he grew and waxed strong. He got strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was on him. So we'll look at the story in this chapter 12 more in a second. But first, we look at verse 7. So we'll eventually get down to more about this woman, more crazy stuff about this woman that was supposed to be Mary. But first we'll look at verse 7 that says, and there was war in heaven. So then they jump to this subject. So as if there was war in heaven right after that, right? That's what this book is saying. That's what this chapter is saying. That it's the very next verse. after it says that the woman fled into the wilderness, it says, and there was war in heaven. So right after that was there war in heaven? No. In fact, I'm leaning now that there wasn't a war. There was no contest. All right? So it's claiming here there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. Why don't you just say the devil or Satan or Lucifer? But the dragon? They look like a dragon? I think not. Because he was an anointed cherub. I don't think God would have an anointed cherub that looked like a dragon. Dragons are mythological anyway. And the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. Okay. So here's that verse in Daniel. Okay, this is a very interesting verse. I want to include this. I think it's very interesting. I modernized this verse. I couldn't find any version that would really put it into easy to understand language and keep the King James flow, because I really like the King James flow on this, but the language was ancient. It is ancient. But the language is archaic and ancient. Here it is. It's Daniel 12:1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which stands for the children of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such that never was, since there was even a nation. I tried to modernize this. Actually, I wrote, since there even was a nation. So in other words, this is the worst time of trouble there ever was in the world before there were even people. And it says, even to that same time, and at that time your people shall be saved, every one that shall be found written in the book. Well, that sounds like the second coming. That sounds like Jesus returning, taking over the world, which I would like to happen. It just has been prophesied falsely, this return of Jesus. By Jesus even himself, he thought it would be soon. All the apostles thought it would be soon. This book of Revelation continues like big time to say that it was going to be soon from the time of the first century. But, if you do believe in it, it wasn't soon. If it is going to happen, it didn't happen soon. It's going to happen long. It would be good, to have powerful being like Jesus come and straighten out the world, take over the world and take over the governments, lay down the law with a rod of iron. And it just says that everybody written in the book. But what book is that? Well, we know it from the book of Revelation. I mean, we don't even have any other information. So the book of Revelation, makes a lot of statements, a few, I should say, that seem to shed light on things that have not really been elaborated on. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that, I think. They believe that was Jesus. Michael was Jesus, the pre-existence. But verse 9 of the chapter, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was kicked out into the earth, and his angels were kicked out with him. I put that in there, kicked out. So the only verse we have in the New Testament, actually in the entire Bible, is from Jesus in Luke 10, which talks about Satan being kicked out. And he just says here, Luke 10:18, and he said to them, I saw Satan as lightning fall from heaven. So according to this account, he just fell from heaven. He wasn't even kicked or cast. That's the word that they use. I wanted to put kick in there because that's the same thing, right? Thrown out, booted. But Jesus said he just fell. Whoop. He slipped and fell. And he fell like lightning. It wasn't slow falling. It was like a lightning strike. Okay? So this business about a war and him being kicked out doesn't really agree with this. It does say some things in Isaiah 14 because it talks about him falling too. The same thing, actually. Well, I just put those verses in there. In fact, I took another version too. Because you see, this chapter in Isaiah, in the King James, uses the word Lucifer, but no other version uses that word. If it wasn't for that, which it isn't in all the other versions, it's not even that clear. It's the 5 I wills. I will that Satan supposedly said, but it doesn't say Satan. It just says Lucifer here in the King James, But then to give you an idea, in the Good News Bible, it continues to talk about the person that is being talked about. When the chapter begins, it says, King of Babylon, bright morning star, you have fallen from heaven. You have conquered nations. Because it's saying it's the king of Babylon. Now I'm going to talk about the fallen angel. No, he says, now I'm going to talk about the king of Babylon. Well, which is it? And then suddenly it sounds like he's talking about Lucifer, so they put that name in there. But no other version, and we could just stay on that subject. We could look at all the different versions. And we could research that, and we will someday. So I'm just going to move on from this. Here, you can read these yourself. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. Oh, so after he was kicked out, then salvation came immediately? They're making it sound that it happened right after that. It didn't happen right after that. It happened about 4,000 years later, at least. That's a long time. But then it says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives to the death. And I wrote here, what about the commandments? See, once again, this is a commandment-less gospel. In other words, in the Old Testament, God gave the law, and he says, if you keep my commandments, you'll prosper. If you won't, you'll be cursed. And he didn't say, you'll never be able to keep them, but I'm commanding you to do it anyway. No. So here it is. It's a completely commandment-less statement that all you need is the blood of the Lamb and the testimony of the blood of the Lamb, because it doesn't say anything else. What kind of testimony? And just hate your life till you die, and then you'll overcome the devil. No, you'll keep the commandments. I mean, there's no doubt that we have to keep the commandments. Even Jesus said, if you keep my commandments, you will not die. If you keep my sayings, you shall not see death. So there's another contrast. Jesus said, if you keep my sayings, if a man keep my sayings, he shall not see death. Well, I like that. I like that. It's a positive. It's a very positive statement. I'm into positive statements. I'm not into negative statements. I'm not into statements about death, martyrdom, suffering. Granted, Jesus was an offering. He was an offering for sin. It's a tough job. It was a tough job, but somebody had to do it. All right. I'm going to finish up on these last 3 verses today. Right here, 12, 13, and 14. Actually, I only went to 14. I should have changed that to 1 through 14. Therefore, rejoice, you heavens, and you that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth. It should say inhabitants. That's how we say it in modern language, not inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. Woe to the inhabitants of the sea? That's not right either. So is he talking to the fish or what? For the devil has come down to you, having great wrath. He's an angry devil, because he knows that he has but a short time. Oh, is that right? A short time from when? It's been a long, long time since he was supposedly kicked out or fell from heaven. Here it doesn't even say he fell, it just says the devil has come down. Oh, is that right? Just come down? And when the dragon saw that he was cast to the earth, came to his senses and suddenly realized he was on the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. Oh, he was persecuting Mary, huh? Yeah, is that right? What was he doing? Now, this next statement is just off the charts crazy, all right? This is certifiably nuts, okay? And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle. Really? So Mary sprouted wings, huh? Is that right? That she would fly, that she might. If she got wings, she might. Into the wilderness. Oh, so I see. So she didn't just walk into the wilderness by herself. She flew into the wilderness. She got some wings. So maybe she got a plane, a modern day plane. But it says she was given 2 wings, just 2. That's enough. Like a bird, right? That she might fly. I don't think so. Into her place. Oh, it's her place? Why is it her place? And then it says where she is nourished. Oh, well, good. They're going to feed her like they said before, right? For a time. Oh, just for a time? And times, different times, when they want to, right? And half a time. So sometimes they won't do it all the time. They do it half a time. From the face of the serpent. Why? Why would the serpent care? He was after Jesus. He wasn't after her. He didn't like Jesus. He was going to devour Jesus, remember? Why would he want to bother with Mary, really? You know, poor old Mary. Humble Mary. The maidservant of God. Servant of God. Mary, the servant of God. We shouldn't pray to Mary like the Catholics do. They pray to Mary. They think Mary is an intercessor. They think she is a mediator. They call her the mediatrix. No, that's not true. If the Bible is true, Mary is not a mediator.